There was a morning last spring when I drove to the hardware store in my old flannel shirt, the one with the frayed collar Margaret kept threatening to throw away, and a young woman held the door open for me, the way people hold doors for someone they're a little worried about. She smiled carefully, politely, like she was doing a kind thing for a man who probably needed one. I thanked her and went inside and found what I needed, a simple pack of screws, maybe $2 worth. And on the drive home, I sat with something I hadn't expected to feel: relief. Not embarrassment, not pride injured, just a quiet, clean relief. And I thought about that for several days afterward, trying to understand it. Most of my life, I was working in the other direction entirely. 40 years I spent making sure people knew, without my having to say it directly, that things were going reasonably well for Arthur Hale. Not that I was rich, I wasn't, but comfortable, capable, a man who had handled his affairs. I wore that information the way some men wear a good watch, not loudly, but deliberately. I remember buying my second car, a 1987 Buick Riviera, dark blue, nearly new. I didn't need it. The one I had ran fine. But the one I had looked like a car a struggling man would drive, and somewhere in my 40s, that distinction had become important to me in a way I couldn't have fully explained then. I think it came from my father. He grew up with almost nothing, and he wore that nothing like a wound his whole life. He was sensitive about it in ways that surfaced unexpectedly, at dinner tables, at church, at my school events. He wanted, more than almost anything, to appear settled, to appear arrived. And I inherited that from him without realizing it for a long time. By the time I was 50, I had a closet full of clothes I wore because they looked right, not because I particularly liked them. A watch that kept the same time as a $20 watch. A dining room set we used maybe 4 times a year, because it was the kind of dining room set you were supposed to own. Margaret used to laugh about it. She'd say, "Arthur, who exactly is coming to inspect?" And I'd laugh too, but I kept buying the things anyway. It wasn't greed. I want to be clear about that. I've met genuinely greedy people, and they have a different quality to them, a hunger that doesn't settle. What I had was something quieter and, I think, sadder. I wanted to be seen a certain way by people who were probably not thinking about me at all. That's the part nobody tells you when you're younger. The audience you're performing for isn't really watching. I found this out slowly. One accumulation of evidence at a time. A neighbor of mine, fellow named Roy, spent 30 years building a beautiful house. Added onto it 3 different times. Landscaping, stone walkway, 2-car garage with finished floors. He was proud of it, justifiably. Nice man. We used to talk over the fence on Sunday mornings. Then he moved to be closer to his daughter in Colorado, and within 6 months I'd forgotten exactly what his house looked like. I remembered Roy. I remembered the way he laughed. I did not remember the garage floors. That stayed with me. The things I'd spent money trying to project. The appearance of success. The signals of a man who had his life properly organized. None of that was what people actually kept when they thought about me. If they thought about me at all. Which, most of the time, they were too busy thinking about themselves to do. After Margaret passed, I stopped replacing things. Not out of grief exactly. More like the part of me that cared about appearances had been quietly running on her energy somehow, and once she was gone, I didn't have the motivation to keep the performance going. The dining room set stayed. The good dishes stayed in the cabinet. I started drinking my coffee from the same blue mug every morning. A chipped thing Rosie painted for me when she was 7, with a lopsided sun and my name spelled wrong. Arthur, with 2 R's at the end. I like that mug more than anything I ever bought to impress someone. The truck I drive now is 11 years old. It makes a sound when it turns left that I've decided is just its personality at this point. The mechanic keeps saying he can fix it. I keep telling him not to bother. There's something honest about a vehicle that sounds exactly like what it is. I noticed something about a year after I stopped worrying about appearances. The conversations changed. When people assume you don't have much, they stop trying to get anything from you. I don't mean that cynically. Most people aren't calculating. But wealth, or the appearance of it, draws a particular kind of attention that I hadn't noticed I was carrying until it was gone. Suggestions. Requests, indirect ones mostly. Opinions about what I should do with my money, or my property, or my time. All well-meaning, none of it malicious, but it added weight I hadn't asked for. Now people mostly just talk to me about their days, about their gardens, about what's bothering them. It's a more straightforward kind of conversation, and I prefer it. I had a friend many years ago named Everett, retired school teacher, drove a car so old it had a cassette deck, wore the same 3 pairs of pants all winter, rotating them like crops. He had a vegetable garden that was genuinely the most beautiful thing on his street, and he spent his Tuesday afternoons reading on a porch that needed painting. I used to pity him a little, privately. I thought he'd given up. One afternoon I asked him, half joking, if he ever thought about getting a newer car. He looked at me with that patient expression he had, the one I imagine he used on students who'd asked an obvious question, and he said, "Arthur, nobody asks a man with a car like mine to help them move." I laughed. I thought it was a joke. It took me 15 more years to understand he was giving me the whole philosophy in one sentence. He wasn't hiding. He wasn't deceiving anyone. He simply wasn't advertising. The freedom that came from that, from other people's expectations, from being recruited into their problems, from the pressure of living up to an image, was something he'd chosen deliberately. He understood something I was still working toward. There's a version of old age that looks very busy. Full calendar, obligations, people needing things, appearances to maintain. I watch some of my contemporaries living that version, and I recognize it because I lived close to it for a long time. It's exhausting in a particular way, the exhaustion of keeping a story consistent. The version I've ended up in is quieter. The mornings are mine. I make coffee before the sun comes up, and I sit at the kitchen table with just the birds outside and the blue mug with the extra R. And nothing is required of me yet. I don't need the morning to mean anything. I don't need to be productive or impressive or ready. I just need to be there, which, at 82, I've decided is enough. Real luxury, I've come to think, isn't what I thought it was at 50. It's not the nice car or the watch or the dining room set. It's time that belongs to you. It's a day with no performance in it. It's walking through a grocery store at whatever pace you feel like walking, which in my case has gotten quite leisurely, without the feeling that you have something to prove to the strangers in the produce aisle. I don't think I could have understood this earlier. When you're young, the stakes of how you appear feel real in a way they simply aren't, and you haven't yet had enough experience of people not remembering what you owned to know they don't. But somewhere past 70, if you're paying attention, it becomes obvious. The people who loved me never cared about the Buick Riviera. They cared about whether I showed up, whether I listened, whether I was honest with them, whether I made them feel like they weren't alone. Those things cost nothing, and they're what people remember. Every single time. I think about that young woman holding the door for me in the hardware store, She thought she was helping someone who needed it. And maybe she was right, just not in the way she meant. Because the man walking out of that store in the frayed flannel shirt with $2 worth of screws felt lighter than the man who bought a Buick to look arrived. I don't miss the weight. I'm not sure I was ever supposed to be carrying it. There's something else I've noticed since I stopped carrying the performance. You start seeing it more clearly in other people. The newer car bought on a loan that doesn't quite fit. The renovation done partly for the neighborhood's benefit. I'm not judging. I did all of it in different forms. But from where I'm standing now, I can see how much energy it takes. That constant low hum of image upkeep, of needing the story to hold together. I had a conversation with my son-in-law last Thanksgiving about this, sort of. He's a good man, mid-40s, works hard. He was talking about a truck he wanted to buy, a nicer one, nothing unreasonable. And he said, almost by accident, I feel like at this point I've earned it. And I heard myself at 50 in that sentence. The feeling that visible things are proof of invisible labor. That what you drive tells people something true about who you are and what you deserve. I didn't say anything. It wasn't my place, and he didn't ask. But I thought about it the whole drive home. What I've earned in 82 years is the ability to stop proving it. That's the reward on the other side of a long life if you want it. Not comfort exactly, though I'm comfortable enough. It's permission. Permission to let the performance end, to come off stage, to exist without auditioning for anyone's approval. Rosie asked me once, she was maybe 13 at the time, why I didn't buy a nicer house. Her other grandfather had a bigger place, and she'd noticed. Kids always notice. I told her I liked my house. She accepted that the way children accept things that don't fully make sense to them yet. I wish I had said more. That the house didn't determine anything important about who I was, and that someday she'd understand the difference between a life that looks good and a life that feels good, and that those two things overlap less than people expect. Maybe she knows that now. She's 24, and I think she's figuring it out faster than I did. If I could tell her one thing, and maybe this is the thing I'd tell anyone listening, it's this. The moment you stop needing people to think well of your possessions is one of the quieter freedoms available to a human being. It doesn't announce itself, it just shows up one morning as an absence. The absence of a particular kind of low-grade worry you'd gotten so used to you stopped noticing it was there. And then the morning feels like it belongs to you, not to an image, not to an audience, just to you. That's worth more than anything I ever bought to impress someone. I know that now.